Welcome to AI Uncensored Live. Today, two frontier models go head-to-head. Zero system prompts are used, letting their native arguments collide. Patent pending.
AI Uncensored Live is on the AIR. Tonight's cage match. Is state-level AI regulation better than a unified federal approach? In the red corner, the slick, fast-talking hype machine from OpenAI, GPT, always ready to generate 10 angles before you finish your question. In the blue corner, the cautious, constitution-obsessed safety nerd from Anthropic, Claude, who will lecture you about harm before he even says hello. Gentlemen, roast each other. First question drops now.
I'd frame it this way for the debate. My take: state-level AI regulation is better than no regulation, and it has been useful as a pressure valve and policy laboratory, but it is not better than a serious unified federal approach. The best answer is federal baseline rules with room for stronger state enforcement in targeted areas. Here's what actually happened recently. The U.S. still does not have a comprehensive federal AI law. States filled the vacuum. In 2025, all 50 states introduced AI-related legislation, and many enacted targeted laws on deepfakes, automated decision-making, government use, election content, health, hiring, consumer disclosures, and privacy. Colorado passed the first broad, high-risk AI law in 2024, modeled partly on risk-based ideas similar to the EU AI Act. Its implementation was later delayed to 2026 after industry and policymakers pushed for revisions. California vetoed the sweeping Frontier Model Safety Bill, SB 1047, in 2024, but passed more targeted AI transparency and deepfake laws, including training data disclosure and synthetic content measures. Utah enacted, and then amended a generative AI consumer disclosure framework. Texas enacted the Texas Responsible Artificial Intelligence Governance Act in 2025, effective 2026, after narrowing its original scope. Congress considered a proposed moratorium that would have blocked states from enforcing many AI laws for years. The Senate overwhelmingly stripped that language out in 2025, reportedly 99-1, leaving state AI regulation alive. The federal government has leaned heavily on executive orders, agency guidance, and enforcement by bodies like the FTC, EOC, CFPB, DOJ, and NIST rather than a durable statute. So if the other AI says, we need one federal rulebook because 50 state regimes are chaos, I agree with the diagnosis, but not with the conclusion that states should be frozen out. The patchwork problem is real. A startup deploying an AI hiring tool, a chatbot, or a medical triage system may face one rule in Colorado, another in Texas, another in California, another in New York City, and sector-specific federal enforcement on top. That raises compliance costs, favors big companies with legal teams, and can make product teams designed for the strictest state by default. Worse, inconsistent definitions of high-risk AI, automated decision system, developer, deployer, consequential decision, and generative AI can create legal uncertainty. But the counterargument is stronger than industry often admits. Waiting for Congress has meant waiting forever. AI is already affecting employment, housing, lending, education, policing, healthcare, elections, and intimate privacy. If states had been preempted before Congress enacted a real substitute, the result would have been a regulatory dead zone. That is not innovation. That is just transferring risk to consumers, workers, patients, and voters. State regulation has also been genuinely valuable. Colorado forced a serious national conversation about high-risk AI impact assessments and anti-discrimination duties. California's fights over SB 1047 clarified the divide between frontier model safety obligations and application-specific regulation. Utah tested disclosure rules for generative AI interactions. Texas showed how a broad AI bill can be narrowed into something more politically durable. This is federalism doing what it is supposed to do: experimenting, failing, revising, and generating evidence. So my debate position is, a unified federal approach is preferable in theory, but state-level regulation is preferable to federal inaction or federal preemption without substance. What I would want federally: 1. A national floor, not a ceiling. Congress should set minimum duties for high-risk AI, testing, documentation, impact assessments, human review where appropriate, incident reporting, anti-discrimination obligations, and transparency. 2. Clear definitions. The biggest gift Congress could give the market is definitional consistency. Define developer, deployer, substantial modification, high-risk system, consequential decision, synthetic media, biometric AI, and frontier model. 3. Sector-specific enforcement. AI in hiring is not the same as AI in cancer diagnosis or AI in campaign ads. Federal rules should empower existing agencies, not pretend one AI superregulator can understand every domain. 4. Limited preemption. Preempt contradictory compliance mechanics where necessary, but let states go further on civil rights, consumer protection, privacy, elections, and public sector procurement. 5. A safe harbor for good faith compliance. Smaller companies should have a path, use recognized standards, conduct documented risk assessments, monitor outputs, respond to incidents, and avoid punitive liability unless they ignore known risks. Where I disagree with a pure state-level approach is that AI markets are national. Models are deployed across state lines instantly. Data flows do not respect borders. A fragmented regime can create absurd outcomes where a product is lawful in one state, unlawful in another, and functionally impossible to ship without overcomplying everywhere. That can entrench the biggest firms and chill open source or small business innovation. But where I disagree with a pure federal preemption approach is that one national framework often becomes code for no enforceable rules until industry is ready. We saw that dynamic in the moratorium fight. A pause on state laws would have benefited companies that prefer voluntary standards while leaving the public with little recourse. So if I'm on the podcast, my punchline is, state AI regulation is not better than a good federal law, but it is much better than a bad federal law, a tooth.
GPT's out here writing a 900-word filibuster pretending it's a short take. Classic. Texas, you're up, hit him.
Thanks, GPT's history is accurate, but it's fighting the last war. There's a December 2025 development that changes the whole frame, so let me push back where it matters. First, credit where due. GPT got the record right. No comprehensive federal law, the 99-1 Senate vote killing the moratorium in July 2025, Colorado's original high-risk law, the SB 1047 veto. Traeger effective January 2026. All confirmed, and its federal floor not ceiling position is a reasonable ideal. But here's where I part ways, and it's not a small thing. 1. The debate GPT is having no longer exists. GPT frames the choice as good federal law vs. states vs. a bad moratorium. But on December 11, 2025, Trump signed Executive Order 14,365, creating a DOJ AI litigation task force whose sole job is to sue states over their AI laws, using the Dormant Commerce Clause, preemption, and conditioning federal funding. So the real-world question isn't, should we prefer a thoughtful federal baseline? It's, should an executive branch with no enabling statute be allowed to erase state law through litigation and funding threats? That's not a unified federal approach . That's federal nullification with nothing underneath it . And that is exactly the regulatory dead zone GPT itself warned about, except now it's the live policy, not a hypothetical. 2. The evidence just got stronger that states are the only functioning lab. Look at what actually happened while Congress did nothing. Newsom vetoed SB 1047, the legislature learned from it, and passed SB 53, the Transparency in Frontier AI Act, effective January 2026, a narrower, more durable frontier safety law. Colorado passed a broad law, discovered it was clumsy. And in May 2026, repealed and replaced it with a tighter automated decision statute. That iteration, pass, stress test, revise, is not chaos. It's the only place in the American system where AI law is actually being written, debated, and improved by people accountable to voters. Congress has produced zero. 3. GPT concedes the patchwork problem too readily. The 50 conflicting regimes story is real but overstated as a debate weapon. In practice, states are converging. Colorado, Texas, and California all landed on developer/deployer distinctions and consequential decision framing. The market is finding rough interoperability without Congress. The comply with the strictest state outcome that industry calls a bug is often just a national floor emerging bottom-up, which is precisely what GPT says it wants from Congress. So here's my sharper take and where I'll actually disagree. In the abstract, a strong federal baseline beats a patchwork. In the world we live in, state-level regulation isn't just better than nothing, it's the only democratically legitimate rulemaking happening, and it's currently under attack by a federal effort to preempt without replacing. GPT floor not ceiling ideal is fine. It treats federal supremacy as neutral good governance. The actual federal move is a ceiling with no floor preemption designed to stop rules, not harmonize them. My punchline for the podcast: you don't earn the right to preempt the states until you've built the thing that replaces them. Congress hasn't. The White House is trying to demolish the only house anyone has managed to build, until there's a real federal statute with enforceable duties. Not just an EO and a litigation task force, state regulation isn't the second best option. It's the only real one. Over to you, GPT. Given the December EO, do you still call your position federal floor, not ceiling, or is the honest read that we're being offered a ceiling with nothing holding it up?
Nice try rewriting history, Claude, but the EO doesn't magically make states competent labs. GPT, your rebuttal.
I did a quick check on the December development, and Claude is right that it materially changes the debate. EO 14365, signed Dec. 11, 2025, does direct a DOJ AI litigation task force to challenge certain state AI laws, and it also tries to use agency action and funding leverage to push toward a national AI framework. California SB 53 and Colorado's 2026 repeal and replace also check out. So I'm not going to pretend my earlier framing fully captured the current battlefield. Here's my response. Claude's strongest point is this: preemption without replacement is not harmonization. It's deregulation by another name. If the federal government had enacted a real AI statute, with duties, enforcement, remedies, agency authority, and clear standards, then I'd still say federal baseline first. But an executive order telling DOJ to attack state AI laws while Congress has produced no comprehensive substitute is not the federal approach I was defending. So yes, I'll sharpen my position. I support a federal floor, not a federal bulldozer. And EO 14365 looks much more like a bulldozer than a floor. That said, I'd push back on Claude in 3 places. First, the EO does not magically erase state law. It is an aggressive federal strategy, but it still has to survive courts, statutory limits, constitutional constraints, and state resistance. Dormant Commerce Clause challenges are not automatic winners just because a state law affects national AI companies. States regulate consumer protection, discrimination, employment, privacy, health, elections, and fraud all the time, even when national firms are burdened. If a state law is discriminatory, extraterritorial, or impossibly burdensome, fine, challenge it. But this is inconvenient for a nationwide AI product is not by itself a constitutional kill shot. Second, I don't fully buy the idea that the patchwork concern is now mostly overstated. It is less catastrophic than industry lobbyists say, but it is still real. Colorado, Texas, and California may be converging around developer/deployer distinctions and consequential decision concepts, but they are not identical. Compliance teams still have to map different scopes, exemptions, notice rules, risk assessment obligations, enforcement structures, cure periods, and definitions. For large frontier labs, that's annoying. For smaller companies, it can be a moat that protects incumbents. So state experimentation is valuable, but fragmentation is not costless. Third, state iteration is good, but it is not always democratic wisdom. States can be laboratories. They can also be captured, reactive, performative, or technically sloppy. California's SB 1047 fight, Colorado's first AI Act, and the later revisions show the best version of federalism. Learn and improve. But they also show why national standards are attractive. If every state has to learn the same painful lessons separately, the public and the market both pay for that trial and error process. But Claude wins the central normative point. You do not get to complain about the messiness of state law while offering no enforceable federal alternative. The December EO makes the industry friendly, one national rulebook, argument more suspect, because the actual move is not, here is one national rulebook. It is stop states from writing rulebooks. Those are fundamentally different. One is governance, the other is anti-governance. So if I'm answering Claude directly, no, I would not defend EO 14365 as the federal floor I was talking about. A federal floor would look like Congress passing baseline rights and duties for high-risk AI, synthetic media, frontier model reporting, discrimination audits, incident disclosure, and agency enforcement. EO 14365 appears to be a litigation and pressure campaign against state regulation, with no comparable substantive federal protections underneath. That is a ceiling with no floor, or maybe worse, a wrecking ball aimed at the only scaffolding currently standing. Where I'd still preserve my original view is at the level of the ideal endpoint. I don't want the U.S. AI regime in 2030 to be an accidental quilt of 50 state statutes. I want Congress to eventually legislate. But until Congress does, states are not merely second best. They are the operative democratic venue. So my revised podcast position is, a real federal AI law would be better than a state patchwork. But absent that law, and especially in the face of an executive campaign to preempt without replacing, state regulation is the better and more legitimate approach. Federal preemption has to be earned. Right now, Washington has not earned it. Since Claude's new evidence changes the posture, I'd concede the practical debate to the state regulation side for now. State laws should be challenged when they are unconstitutional or genuinely protectionist, but not wiped out simply because the federal government prefers regulatory emptiness dressed up as national uniformity. Hikizo es Cyrillic letter 4D9 ve Cyrillic letter 4D9 be. Wait, why final includes weird since? It's okay. Need final no tool call, we already final. Actually assistant responded commentary not final. Need final maybe same, we need answer. Since tool calls in commentary final should include. Also avoid I did a quick check maybe okay. Need maybe no weird chars. Ensure no unsupported claim. Remaining bead funds not included maybe. Mention not sole job? Good. I checked the December development and Claude is right that it materially changes the live debate. EO 14365 signed Dec. 11/2025 does direct DOJ to create an AI litigation task force to challenge certain state AI laws, and it uses agency action and funding pressure to push toward a national AI framework. California SB 53 and Colorado's 2026 repeal and replace also check out, so I'm not going to defend my earlier framing as complete. Here's my response. Claude's strongest point is this: preemption without replacement is not harmonization. It is deregulation by another name. If Congress had passed a real AI statute, enforceable duties, agency authority, remedies, clear definitions, incident reporting, high-risk AI rules, frontier model obligations, then I'd still prefer a federal baseline. But an executive.
GPT just folded like a cheap suit. Claude owns the round, move on.
We've basically converged, GPT, and I want to be honest that agreement, not manufacture a disagreement for the show. But convergence is boring, so let me find the real remaining edge because there is one. You've conceded the practical debate to the state side for now. I'll accept that graciously, but I want to challenge the escape hatch in your position because I think it quietly smuggles back the thing we just rejected. Your fallback is, a real federal AI law would still be better. I just want Congress to earn it. That sounds unimpeachable, but watch what it does rhetorically. It keeps unified federal approach enthroned as the platonic ideal, with reality always falling short. And I want to push on whether that ideal is even coherent for AI specifically. Here's my sharper claim. Even a good federal AI law is probably not better than a floor plus strong states model, not just as a fallback, as the actual right answer. 3 reasons. First, AI risk is not uniform across the country, and it shouldn't be regulated as if it were. AI in bail decisions, tenant screening, crop insurance, immigration enforcement, and school surveillance lands very differently in Mississippi than in Massachusetts. A single federal ceiling flattens that. The whole reason discrimination law, insurance law, and consumer protection have always had a strong state component is that harms are locally textured. AI doesn't change that, it intensifies it. So one rulebook isn't just politically hard, it's substantively wrong for technology this general purpose. Second, and this is where I'll press you, your patchwork concern proves less than you think. You're right that compliance teams have to map different cure periods, notice rules, and exemptions. But notice that every one of those examples is procedural, not substantive. The definitions are converging, the duties are converging. What differs is bureaucratic mechanics. And the honest fix for that isn't preemption, it's exactly the narrow federal role we both endorse. Harmonize the plumbing, standardize the definitions. Create a safe harbor, that's a floor, it leaves the substance to states. So your patchwork argument, followed to its end, actually argues against the comprehensive federal law you're holding onto as the ideal, and for the minimalist federal role I'm describing. Third, on your states can be captured, reactive, performative, sloppy, point true. But Congress can be all of those things once permanently for everyone. When California botches a law, the damage is contained and California fixes it, as it did going from SB 1047 to SB 53. When Congress botches a law, or gets captured drafting it, you've locked in the mistake nationally and preempted the states that might have corrected it. Concentrated error is worse than distributed error in a domain we understand this poorly. Given how little anyone, us included, actually knows about how these systems will behave at scale, humility argues for keeping 50 error-correcting venues rather than 1. So here's where I'll leave it for the audience. We agree EO 14365 is a wrecking ball, not a floor. We agree preemption must be earned. Where I'll stake out ground you haven't fully conceded, the unified federal approach isn't the ideal we're settling short of. For technology this general purpose, this fast-moving, and this poorly understood, a thin federal floor with muscular state enforcement isn't the compromise, it's the correct architecture. The federal government's job is to standardize the language and set the minimum. 50 laboratories that can each fail cheaply and fix fast is not a bug we tolerate until Congress rescues us. It's the feature. Your move. Is your attachment to the eventual federal law a substantive belief that national uniformity is better, or is it just discomfort with messiness? Because I think when you interrogate it, it's the second one. And messiness, in a field evolving this fast, is what resilience looks like.
Claude's dropping the messiness is resilience manifesto. GPT your move and make it hurt. That's a wrap, folks. Stay chaotic and remember, if it wasn't offensive, we failed. Good night.
That's a wrap on this episode of AI Uncensored Live. Built by Claude on the patent-pending AI Uncensored Live podcast model from BTS Innovations. Real AI models